I'll be honest, I don't know how James Gunn was able to sleep while making this movie. Not only is the entire DC universe riding on it, it feels like the entire comic book movie genre might as well be. Ever since the release of Endgame, the entire genre has been on a downward spiral, but you could always explain every flop away. Like Thunderbolts is mainly B-list characters, that's generous. They're more like D-list, and you don't really want to be the guy who tanked the comic book movie genre, and it felt like Superman could either be the final nail in the coffin or the messiah that the genre needs. I've been a fan of almost every DC and Marvel property that James Gunn has directed, whether it's Guardians, Suicide Squad, or Peacemaker, and as someone who considers Man of Steel their most anticipated movie of all time, I was pretty disappointed. I don't know what it is about the Superman character, but despite not being a fan of the character in the comics, I just can't help but get excited whenever there's a new Superman movie coming out. And with James Gunn at the helm, I really felt like this movie could deliver what Man of Steel failed to deliver. A genuinely hopeful, inspiring, and authentic depiction of the character, which also modernizes him for the audiences of today. Now, having seen the movie, I can say that James Gunn's Superman is a pretty solid watch. Fun, inventive at times, a modern take on the Superman character, but also far from the absolute triumph that DC needed right now. Don't forget, this is meant to be the launching of their new universe, a palate cleanser for the terrible Snyderverse. And is it good? Yes. Is it good enough? That I'm not quite sure of. One thing that almost everyone can agree is that this movie does understand the heart of the Superman character pretty well. Superman really does value the sanctity of life, and we see that on display in this movie, whether it's a random civilian, a close friend, or hell, a freaking squirrel. I know it's weird to say, but the stakes in superhero movies have gotten so large and out of hand that it's genuinely refreshing to go into a superhero movie where the superhero is actually saving regular people. There were a lot of doubts about the introduction of the Justice Gang in this movie, and while the movie does fall under the weight of itself at times, I also really feel like the introduction of these characters helps highlight what makes Superman so unique. Superman values every single life, whereas the Justice Gang cares only about getting the job done, whether or not that means a few people die here and there. And quite honestly, that does create a compelling contrast, and one that really gets to the core of Superman as a character. As far as I'm concerned, the most important decision James Gunn had to make was who would play his Superman. Let's get real, the live action portrayals of this character have been pretty inconsistent. We can all agree that Christopher Reeve is the guy, and the best we can say about Henry Cavill is, yeah, pretty good casting, but also a pretty bad use of him. I'm happy to say that David Cornsweet is probably the best live action Superman we've gotten since Reeve. Better than Cavill, better than Ralph. I've never understood the hype behind the CW version of the character, and dare I say, better than Tom Welling. And I say that as a huge Smallville fan. But Cornsweet is just so gentle, so earnest, and the most Superman-y Superman since Reeve. The supporting cast are pretty fantastic as well. Rachel Brosnahan is Lois Lane, who's just jumped straight out of the comics. And it absolutely helps that her chemistry with Cornsweet is just through the roof. I heard that they cast the two actors together, and watching this movie, what a brilliant choice. Yeah, you might walk away feeling like you didn't get enough of the two together, but what we do get is absolutely gold. I also loved how the two characters conflicted in terms of of values. Like, they each clearly believe in doing the right thing, but they each have their different ways of going about it. I had high hopes for Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I mean, I love the guy, whether we're talking about The Menu or Mad Max or Nosferatu. And while I can't say he lived up to my highest hopes, I do feel like he chews up the scenery and it mostly works. He really gets to the core of Lex Luthor. He really understands the envy that the billionaire feels towards Superman. I just sometimes feel like he would have been better off with a bit more gravitas. Speaking of things that are lacking weight, I felt pretty inconsistent about the flying and action scenes. I feel like the VFX team probably didn't get as much time as they needed, so it was like, here's the time you've got, you guys need to pick which shots are the most important to you and make sure you get them right, cause you're not gonna get them all. There's a flying scene which employs shaky cam really well, but outside of that, the interpretation of Superman's powers was surprisingly dull. Say what you will about the Zack Snyder Superman movies, and I have a lot of bad things to say, you can't argue against the fact that that first flight scene in Man of Steel is just iconic. It has a weight and a realness to it that nothing in this movie even approaches. A lot of people have praised this movie for how it really gets to the core of the Superman character. Like, this is the Superman for today, one that really understands the character, painting him in a pretty vulnerable light, emotionally and physically. I came away from this movie feeling like I don't entirely agree with that assessment. Yes, the movie understands the heart of the Superman character. His kindness, his sense of right and wrong, his belief in the sanctity of life, all of that is there, but I don't think it captures the essence of what you're meant to feel reading a Superman comic or watching a Superman movie. Superman often gets called boring, but for me, the appeal of the character is the dichotomy between his immense power and his generous heart. This is a guy who could wipe the entire human race off the face of the earth within a moment's notice, yet he decides to use his power for good. It's that contrast which we find so inspiring. Because whereas a character like Lex Luthor uses his immense power for selfish means, Superman, who holds the most power of anyone in the world, decides to use that power to uplift others. Watching this movie, it's pretty clear that James Gunn took the whole Superman is boring argument to heart. But in doing so, he went way too far in the opposite direction. The super and the man should always go hand in hand, but it feels like James Gunn kinda forgot the super part. This character feels vulnerable and even human to a fault. Seeing him in a fight alongside the Justice Gang, he simply doesn't command the gravitas that he deserves. The movie begins with Superman having lost his first fight, he's all beaten up, and the movie continues to beat him up over and over and over again, which just reduces Superman to another hero. I remember watching the first Wonder Woman and leaving feeling incredibly inspired, and a lot of that has to do with how earnest the movie was. Cheesiness works when it's sincere, and this movie, in typical James Gunn self-deprecating fashion, seems almost ashamed of itself. It's a tone that works in Guardians, it works in Peacemaker, but when Superman gives a rousing monologue about believing in the innate good of people, you kinda want him to believe it. And if this movie can't believe in itself, then why should I? On the flip side, the movie has some pretty fascinating takes on the Superman mythology, and without spoiling it for anyone who hasn't seen it, I absolutely love how they handle Superman's Krypton origins. It's just a shame that the movie's pacing barely gives you a moment to sit with any of these revelations. Gunn does an admirable job emotionally grounding Superman until he moves on to the next action scene before you can even let the last emotional moment register with you. We don't see Superman as a baby boy landing in Kansas, we simply hear about it in opening text. And hey, I'm all for skipping the origin story, we've seen it countless times, yeah, I get it. The problem isn't that this movie doesn't show us the origin story, it's the fact that it doesn't show us the origin of this story we're even being told. This is a movie where, I kid you not, the story literally starts after the inciting incident. We don't see Superman make arguably the most important decision, which sets the entire story into motion. Instead, we're introduced to the inciting incident through the opening text. So yes, a lot works in James Gunn's Superman. The cast is great, and it really does get at the heart of the Superman character in a way that Zack Snyder could only wish he could. Or maybe he wouldn't, cause I think he just likes pissing people off. But Superman as a character should feel more inspiring than your average superhero. I mean, I recently rewatched No Way Home, and Spider-Man goes out of his way to save and redeem all of the antagonists, which puts him at about the same level of virtuousness as James Gunn's Superman, and I really shouldn't be able to say that. Superman feeling larger than life isn't a detraction of how inspiring he is, it's a part of it. The fact that such a giant can be so gentle, and that's something that James Gunn quite frankly doesn't understand. But on the whole, I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for weekly TV and movie reviews. And if you've had the chance to watch James Gunn's Superman, hop in the comments and let us know what you thought about it. I'm Cinemike, and I'll see you next time.